want to welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us again for another live conversation here at our law firm summer reboot camp. I am your host, Nick Werker. Today, we're focused on legal technology, and our final guest of the day is a big one, not physically. I would not like to comment about his appearance at all, but he works as the lawyer in residence and data protection officer at Cleo. And over the years has traveled around the world speaking to law firms of every size in an effort to learn more about the needs of attorneys and make Cleo's law practice management software even better than it already is. So we're very excited to obviously hear some of his thoughts today. Thank you for joining us. I want to talk about the legal trends report because you brought it up. It's become, seriously, I read it every year. I have it bookmarked. I think I have multiple years bookmarked, but it's become a must-view document for everybody here and a lot of lawyers and everybody really in the legal industry. So I found it obviously particularly interesting following it over the years because we've seen the legal industry change so much during that time. So I want to ask you directly because I feel like I'm going to hear it from the horse's mouth very selfishly. What would you say has stood out to you the most when reviewing the data that Clio's collected from 2019 to the most recent report in 2021?
Yeah, we've actually been collecting the data the entirety of Clio's existence. And we knew that the data that was being contributed by the law firms that use Clio was something special. It just hadn't existed in a collected format ever before. And I do want to highlight, because this is very important, with the legal trends report and the data that lawyers entrust to Clio, we actually cannot see what's being done within your account. We can't see your clients. We can't see your documents, right? We have both technical and contractual constraints on that. But what we can see is how lawyers and law firms are using Clio. What settings are they doing? How often are they triggering certain functions? And we need to know how they're using Clio to make sure that we're supporting it appropriately. And the example I like to give is you can set customizable hourly rates in Clio. And there could be a hypothetical lawyer charging $20 an hour and a hypothetical lawyer charging $2,000 an hour. And we need to kind of know the top and the bottom so that we can properly support both of them, making sure the math is working when you generate your bills, for example, at the end of the month. And because we can see the top and the bottom, we can also see the bell curve in between those two tops and bottoms. And from there, we can start to kind of see some certain trends along the way. And I can't tell you who's charging 20. I can't tell you who's charging 2,000, but I can tell you a bell curve exists and what can we figure out from that. And back in 2014, we realized that just this usage data alone could be incredibly valuable as a part of that virtuous feedback cycle that I mentioned before to Clio's customers and maybe the legal industry as a whole. So one of the things we did is we adjusted our terms of service to ask for permission to use aggregate anonymized data to start publishing legal trends reports. And before we even went to our first report, we also built in the function within Clio that you can opt your law firm out. So all of the data that you see in Clio's legal trends reports is from law firms that are voluntarily committing to improving the legal industry by sharing just this an aggregate anonymized data of their Clio usage. And it's tens of thousands of law firms. And why is it special? Because we've never had tens of thousands of law firms sharing this type of insight directly before. If you wanted to figure out what to charge per hour in your practice area as a lawyer 10 years ago, your best bet was to go down the hall and hope there was somebody who was practicing law in your practice area and was willing to talk to you, right? And they knew what they were doing when they set their billable hourly rate. And that was it. You know, you had a sample of a couple people, or we saw Thomson Reuters or Lexis publishing surveys, mostly of big law lawyers, and the rest of the industry trying to model themselves against it. And now we have the legal trends report, which we first published in 2016, that actually holds up a mirror to the vast majority of lawyers out there in the United States and shows them how they're actually working, what they're actually charging, what's being effective in terms of moving the dial for their law firms. So when you ask what was like the big shocking moment of the legal trends report, to this day, our first one in 2016 still, I think, set the tone for how lawyers should be thinking about their practice, when we discovered that most lawyers were actually only billing around 2 hours a day on average. And the expectation based on those surveys that I talked about before was like 6 to 8 hours a day. So most lawyers are only billing about 2 hours a day, and most lawyers are only getting paid for around 1.6 hours per day. It was just a huge shock to everybody's assumptions on what lawyers were doing with their day and how it was translating into revenue for the law firm itself. And so much of our research since then has been trying to figure out, why does that weird number exist and how can we make it better for both lawyers and clients?
I think that's what I love so much about the report, is that it's, before that, there was no way for somebody to really, without data, you can't make decisions. Before that, there was no way for somebody to sit down and say, this is my problem. I've identified it. Here's how I'm going to go about solving it. And and what I liked most about the most recent trends report was that there was a ton of discussion. And I think it was earlier this year or late last year that I had Jack Newton, who's, the founder, on the podcast, and he was talking, or we were talking really about the idea of building a client-centered law firm, really like building your practice around the kind of client that you want and the kind of clients you already have, and improving the experience for clients using the firm. So can you give us your view on what a client-centered law firm should look like and the role that technology can play in crafting the experience for the firm?
Yeah, so what I think the client-centered law firm looks for is a win-win situation on behalf of the client. That doesn't mean that the client is always going to win in terms of, say, their case, but that the client, as a part of employing the lawyer and the law firm, has an experience where they feel like they've been listened to, they've gotten value from the experience, even if they don't necessarily win, right? That they hired a firm that listened and took their concerns seriously and acted appropriately. Now, how does that translate into the variety of different firms that we have here today? I mean, it's going to be different in every situation. Just like every lawyer in Cleo, I have the reputation of my default answer being, it depends, right? So unfortunately for the client-centered law firm, it's the same. But if your target audience, for example, is high volume, low value cases, like say a traffic lawyer, right? Your client-centered law firm is going to be something where it's very easy for clients to identify you, to onboard themselves, to pay quickly, and to end their experience. And technology enables each of those steps, right? I've got really good marketing and SEO. I've claimed my Google My Business profile. I have a client CRM system where clients can just give me their information, upload their ticket, pay their bill, and then I'm off to court to do a quick plea agreement with the municipal lawyer, right? That where the ticket resides, the traffic court. And then I've got the report that goes to them at the end, kind of a severance agreement as a part of that email template with them. So I've got templated emails. I use maybe MailChimp or Custom Contact or something like that. And then I'm done, right? That is a client-centered law firm. People don't want a traffic lawyer to require them to go to their office, spend time on the phone, make an appearance at traffic court. They want, take care of this and get it done. But then there's lawyers that are on the other end of that spectrum, right? Maybe you are an estate planning attorney, or maybe you help with trusts, or maybe you're a business attorney giving advice over a series of different matters. And in those cases, your clients might prefer something more like telephone or in-person meetings. They might prefer a subscription model of billing, right? Where they have fixed payments over time, whether it's a payment plan or a retainer and then hourly billings. you need to have the flexibility to support that. They might want the ability to redline documents with you, right? I like this paragraph, but not this paragraph. And technology helps with all of those. You can use technology to actually have a phone system that works for the way you want to live. An example of that is voice over IP, right? I don't want to give clients my cell phone number, but I want to talk to clients on my cell phone. So I use a voice over IP service like Google Phone or Ring Central, or Corvus is one of our integration partners. And that gives me a phone number that my clients can call that then forwards to my cell phone. Boom, my needs are taken care of. I actually link that with a virtual answering service like Ruby Receptionist or Legal.ai, and they can actually answer my phone for me and see if they need to interrupt the work that I'm doing. And then when my clients have different desires for billable rates, I can use technology to set that custom rate for that client, whether it's they get one bill for the entire year, but it's spread out via payment plan, or whether it's a recurring retainer that has to be topped up periodically, or whether it's I just have, a friends and family discount for that client, right? And it's automatically applied when I generate my bills. Technology can help with all of that. And of course, we're all using online collaboration tools right now for documents, right? So Office 365, I can actually redline and collaboratively edit documents with clients as we go through them. And if you've never done that before, it actually is kind of a game changer to work on the same document at the same time. It seems like it would be crazy and frustrating, but if you pair it with a Zoom call, where you're like, I'm gonna edit this paragraph, and the other person's like, I'll grab this one. It just works your way through the document so quickly. So the client-centered law firm is about meeting the clients in a place where it is a win-win for the lawyer and the client, and turning that into the experience of legal services.
I love the idea of, because I'm always preaching that, especially in my line of work, a lot of people will ask me like, what's the best way to do legal intake and manage your leads and answer the phone, all that stuff. And my advice is always to meet the person where they're at. But I do love the idea that the client-centered law firm is only to go that far and not overextend, because when you were talking about like the traffic ticket lawyer, it's upload the ticket, write a picture of the ticket, and then you never have to see me again. You just pay me, I'll go to court and I'll handle it. But I love like the maybe the traffic ticket attorney who's gone too far in the other direction is like, no, you need to come sit with me and I'll tell you my process and how I'm going to make this go away. And it's like, dude, I just want to pay you a couple $100 and get this ticket to go away. So you can do too much and you can do too little. It's about really understanding the needs of your client and then basing the process around their needs, not what you think would be really nice. I want to,
and it should benefit both sides. And that's, I think, one of the things people don't think about in the client-centered law firm. Attorneys already kill themselves in an attempt to really aid their clients, right? I don't think you should be adding more onto the burden of being an agent for your client, but instead you should find ways for it to be easier for both of you guys to work together. You're already doing enough representing them. Now find a way to make it easier, better, cheaper, faster, affordable, whatever value you're aiming for, find that value and make it happen for both of you.
I totally agree. And it's about like not wasting time too. So I want to compare. So when you compare growing law firms, just how much of an advantage do fully modernized practices that are centered around great technology have over the competitors who are failing to stay up to date?
That's actually a really great question. And it's one of the things we've started being able to quantify. So back in 2018, we were able to identify, again, in an anonymized aggregate basis, 1,600 law firms that have been using Clio for a period of 5 years previous to that. And from that cohort, we were able to identify that some law firms were growing, some law firms were stable, and some law firms were shrinking. And we then broke that down by the key performance indicators that we look at for law firms. Are they utilizing their day in the practice of law, the utilization rate? How many hours a day are you billing? Are they then actually realizing that billable work on their invoices? So if you've worked 3 hours a day, do you put 3 hours a day on your bill, or do you give yourself a haircut? That's the realization rate. And then we looked at collection rates for law firms. Of the bill you actually hand the client, how much of it do they pay? And when we looked at those cohorts of growing, shrinking, and stable law firms, we found there was one key performance indicator that just jumped out, and that was utilization. Law firms that make it easy to focus on being a lawyer rather than running a law firm, which is this weird necessary dichotomy, actually have an increased revenue of 50% over a period of 5 years. They doubled their revenue basically through slow and steady improvements of their utilization rate. And it's not a huge change. It's actually, they went from a utilization rate of around 28% to 33%. There's just 5 little points right there. But that was enough over a period of 5 years to double revenue. They just spent a little bit more time each day practicing law rather than running their law firm. And when we saw that number in 2018, we're like, okay, we got to figure out what's driving that. So in 2019 and 2020, we took a look at a lot of the different features that are being utilized in Clio, and we were able to identify 3 that we think make huge changes on behalf of the law firm. The first is some type of online client intake. So the ability for potential clients to identify themselves, for you to organize your follow-up with them, and to either kind of terminate the window shopping or convert a potential client to an actual client. That's what client intake does for you. And it saves you actually a lot of data entry as well, because they just type in this information for themselves. The second one was having a client portal. So once I've gone from potential client to actual client, do we have a place where we can share messages, bills, tasks, calendar entries, all of these things to remain organized? And then the last impactful technology was the ability to pay online. So via credit card, via debit card, via e-check, can we make that all happen? So when we took a look and we're able to identify those 3 technologies as impactful, then we took a look at how impactful. And what we found is the average law firm was earning between $33,000 to $36,000 more per lawyer in revenue per year when they utilized all 3 of those technologies. If you were a solo lawyer, it was actually closer to $50,000 in additional revenue, because that technology shared a little bit of the workload with the clients, saved you time on business development, saved you time on billing and collections, and all these little savings added up to more time when you can practice law. And so each of those individual technologies has benefits in addition to the additional revenue, but it all adds up to a slightly improved utilization rate and a huge boost in revenue to the law firms. So if you are a law firm that is mature and utilizing these technologies to their fullest, big benefits.
I love the idea of quantifying how efficient you could have been, if only. And that's interesting for me, because that speaks to just the firms that were using a platform like Cleo, which is already powerful enough. And then use it better, and you can make $36,000 more per attorney in the firm, and double your revenue over a period. Okay, I like to quantify. For anyone tuning in a little late, welcome to our law firm summer reboot camp. My name is Nick Werker. I'm not important. Today we're focusing on legal tech, and here with me is Joshua Lenon, a lawyer in residence and data protection officer at Cleo. I got to tell you that one of the more common things that comes up in conversation with legal experts is that, and I've sort of named a podcast after this too, is that law school doesn't do the best job, or any job really, of teaching attorneys how to run a business. And as a result, a lot of lawyers are pretty lost during the early years of running their own practice. So I want to talk about like helping jumpstart law firms. Like, what role can technology play in helping lawyers get educated on the business side of running their practice, and also help them make more educated decisions about their firm's future?
Well, I think one of the first things that lawyers have to realize is technology can't make you a good business person, but it can make it easier to be a good business person. So you need to do a lot of the learnings of fundamentals around running a business when you're running a law firm. There's no getting around that. But once you understand what those basics are, like what is your cash flow? What's your win-loss report for new clients? What's your overhead expenses? How do you manage those? Then once you understand those concepts, technology can really help you manage those. And fortunately, I think Clio is at a place where we can actually help answer some of those questions at the very beginning. So what should my billable rate be, for example, is something that we can help a law firm decide based on legal trends data. We now have a breakdown of 40 different practice areas and their billable rates for lawyers and non-lawyer legal professionals on every state in the US. And you can just swing by Clio's legal trends page, jump into our billable rate calculator, and get a comparison of what your proposed rate is versus the average rate. And from there, you can make decisions, right? Am I trying to kickstart my law firm with value add type business where I'm an advisor and I want to charge more than the average? Or am I trying to undercut my potential competitors, right? And make myself more attractive on that. And that's a bit of technology that just didn't exist. Like I said, 10 years ago, 7 years ago. Now I think about it, we published the rate calculator in 2017. So the ability to actually have data on what are some of my baseline assumptions and expectations and move from there is something really impactful in legal. And we've taken those key performance indicators that I mentioned before, and we've built them into a dashboard in Clio. And so you can actually get a year-over-year comparison now on things like your utilization rate. And are you trending above or below where you were the year before? The technology has also given us insight into the seasonality of different practice areas. And that's one of the things we published as a legal trends report as well. So am I having a bad month, or is it just a down month in my practice area? Is something that technology can help you answer. But in addition to all of that, technology can start giving you heads up when things are going off the rails. One of the billing models that I mentioned before is potentially having a minimum, I'm going to trip over this, but having what's basically called an Evergreen Retainer, which is a minimal amount of funds being held in trust on behalf of the client. If you ever go below that, then the client is required to top it back up. We found in our 2017 legal trends report that firms that accept advanced fee deposits and hold them in trust on behalf of clients have an 18% higher realization rate and a 16% higher collection rate. So you're basically giving yourself like a 15% raise by having a trust account. But having a trust account by itself is not enough because there's a whole bunch of responsibility that comes around that. I have to track every deposit. I have to assign every penny to a client and potentially to a matter, depending on how the client is using those funds. I have to maintain ledgers and receipts and have those available on demand for my regulators, whether it's the court or bar association. And so technology like Clio and Clio payments can actually help route that money from the client's checking account or their credit card or their debit account directly to your trust account in a way that's ethically compliant. So there's no processing fees being taken out of it. Create the ledger entries on your behalf, have the reports ready for on demand, track every transfer or disbursements from that as you make them. And then when it comes time to do an accounting for the client or your regulator, it's all instantly available. And technology can just do that for you. And all you'd have to do is notice that there's a notification in the app saying, hey, this Evergreen Retainer is now below its minimal agreed amount. Do you want to send a top-up request? Click here, boom. We even have the email address and the email template already linked for you. And our own data has shown that when those types of requests go out, the vast majority of them, like 59%, are actually paid within the first day. And then at the end of 48 hours, 72% of them are paid. And so it's just all of this different automation in the background, helping you be compliant and a better business person, while just letting you focus on the things that matter, like the services you're providing your clients. So technology can't do it all for you, but it can help with a lot of the processes once you understand them and apply them.
It's sort of like, to me, having a foolproof assistant, right? So if you have all the information, most of the time, even if you look at it 1,000 different ways, you might not be able to pick up, a slight change that you could be optimizing. But I love the idea that there's notifications that can just help you realize the gains that you could have been making in the first place.
Yeah, I do want to caution, there's no foolproof system. So please don't think any piece of software out there will solve all of your problems. And I also think it's important for lawyers to maintain that professional independence. That is a key component of our industry, right? And so the buck stops with the lawyer always, but the partners, like software vendors like Clio, should be incredibly transparent about what they're doing and how they're doing it on behalf of the law firm, such that it's very easy for the lawyer to have oversight and control and use it to the best of their benefit and their client's benefit.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you don't get that when you don't have a lawyer in residence.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Company, right?
I like that. It's like, we don't claim liability for how well you use the software. We try to help you use it to the best of our ability. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's in the lawyer's hands to make those decisions, right? Like, you don't have to click the button that sends out the top-up agreement.
Well, we don't know what works best for you and your clients. It really is the case. And so there's a lot of use cases in Clio where one of the things I have to do is say, no, an edge case exists. So we as a company don't get to make the decision on behalf of the lawyer, but we should set it up in such a way that the lawyer can see this route works for me and my clients, this route doesn't, and can easily change the settings and go back and forth between the two as needed. And so an example of that would be different types of use for, different types of use for different fees. And so if I've got a percentage agreement with my client, one of the early assumptions at Clio was there's no need to track time then, right? Because it's not the time that matters, but it's the percentage of the settlement that will determine the final bill. And I'm like, no, in many instances, you have to submit like proof that the fee that you have earned, the contingency fee, is worth it for the work that you have done. And the best way for a lawyer to be able to do that is to generate a list of the activities that they've done on behalf of the client. And guess what? Now you're tracking time again. And so at Clio, they wanted to turn off the ability to track time when you have a contingency fee. And I'm like, guys, no, that's not the best choice for some of the lawyers that do contingency fee billing. So we have to let the lawyer make that choice themselves, but we have to show them where they can, and we have to make it easy for them to do it. And it's that kind of flexibility that's really tough to build into a system, right? You can add too much, just like we were talking about, a lawyer can do too much, or you can make it too convoluted. And we've made that mistake sometimes too. But when you create that feedback cycle, both internally with a lawyer in residence and externally with the lawyers we work with, we get it right more often than we get it odd. So, yeah.
I like that. I like the line of thinking where it's more democratized. It's that, like, you have the ability to make it sort of mandatory in the system, but you don't do it because at the end of the day, you're not involved in the day-to-day. And and it's not your decision to make regarding that person's firm. I am really interested in this because I think there's always a sense that like adoption of a new trend is what drives the trend, but it's really not. It's really consumer demand that determines a trend. So I'm
Oh, yeah.
curious, because you have access to a lot of data, but also you have access to a ton of law firms. Do you
Mhm.
believe that legal consumers are now so much more used to virtual communication because there's a massive amount of technology available for growing firms? And because of this like new expectation, does it make more sense for an attorney to manage their firm virtually rather than out of a physical space?
100% yes. So back in 2018, as part of the Legal Trends Report, we surveyed legal consumers, so clients and potential clients. And we found that only around 23% had any interest in working with a law firm remotely. And then in 2020, when we asked that same question, that number jumped up to 78%. When I say 100%, it's an actual 100% percentage change between the clients who thought it was important back in 2018 and now in 2020 when they're like, yeah, you better have Zoom.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is they didn't necessarily want virtual in every step of their communication with a lawyer, but they wanted the option of virtual in a lot of those steps. And what I think became readily apparent in the different stages of communication is there were times when clients wanted synchronous communication, like you and I are having right now, right? There's a back and forth, there's questions, there's the ability to react. And then there were times when they felt asynchronous communication was just fine. Like send me a notification that I'll pop up when I need it, right? Like a text message reminder that we have a phone call in 15 minutes. And that type of communication is a part of the client-centric law firm, figuring out when the client wants to communicate synchronously, whether it's in person, on the phone, via video chat, and when it's okay for you to use asynchronous communication with them. Like, here's my bill. You don't have to pay it during the business day. Pay it when you're at home doing your bills on the dining room table. That's just fine. But here it is. Here's how you can get to it. Here's how I make it easy for you when you have time for that. So virtual communication is 100% now more expected. Interestingly, of the legal consumers that we surveyed, people who had hired a lawyer in the past were more desirous of virtual communication options than people who hadn't hired a lawyer in the past. And so people who kind of know what we do, know we can do it over Zoom. And so having that option available is important. It was even 59% of baby boomers wanted remote options. And that was the smallest percentage. So everybody is thinking virtual can be a part of legal services, and it should be.
I love that. I love that phrase. I've seen what you do. I know you can do it virtually. And now I want to do it virtually.
Yeah.
It's sort of but it makes a lot of sense, right? It also, I like the idea that you said everything is a win-win, right? And in the days of like credit card, and I don't want to read my credit card over the phone, I got to come down there and swipe my credit card, or I have to come down there and cut you a check or hand you a stack of cash,
Yeah.
or I gotta come down there and have a consultation with you. Like, no, we can do it over. Imagine that I had this event, right? And and listen, there's plenty of events where people get on a plane, but on like whatever notice I gave you, I told you that you have to fly down to New York. You might not be so willing to do it. All,
Journey for me to get from Vancouver to New York.
Yeah, and I don't blame you for not wanting to do it today, which is why that this medium, which is pretty high in immediacy for consumers, is available to us. But so I think we're sort of getting to the place where a lot of the communication can be done not face to face, even though it's sort of face to face, right? But when it comes to the future of legal, I mean, you have so much insight. Do you What do you think is next? Like, what's going to happen here?
So I have several predictions, and they're based on the different types of law that's practiced out there. I think one of the things we're going to see is we're going to see the state legislature starting to really play with subject matter jurisdiction. And that's probably not the answer you were expecting at all. But we're going to see them take certain types of cases and disputes and legal requirements and take them out of the court system and put them into their own separate streams. So small claims is like the historical example of this, right? You don't go to court, you go to small claims. But I think we'll start to see that for a lot of different things that are called the laws of personal plight. So divorces, for example, probate, things that happen to people and need to be resolved, but don't necessarily need court. And we're going to see subject matter jurisdiction strip the courts of that subject matter jurisdiction and turn them into these administrative tribunals. A lot of them will probably be poorly designed tech solutions. And when there is a poorly designed tech solution, that is actually a gold mine for lawyers to come and help with all of the different ways they don't actually reflect the needs of the people going through them. So if I'm a lawyer focusing on divorce, I'm going to be looking for ways to coach clients on how to utilize the shifting mediums for resolving them and how to get maybe a collaborative approach between the parties that are entering them to navigate between them. That's something that's different than a lot of lawyers do before. Rather than finding one client, now you have to find two. So what we're going to see lawyers shifting to, especially in the solo and small law firms, is now more of a coaching service where the clients do the work and you help guide them through, or you're dealing with the fallouts of these systems and it'll be a much narrower scope of what needs to be resolved, but you'll be actually more working against a system rather than helping clients through a system, if that makes sense. If I'm a divorce attorney now, I'm helping clients navigate through how do I get a court order on a division of property, on who pays support, who pays alimony, how do we adjust that in the future, right? I'm navigating them through to that court order. In the future, divorce is going to be, some website gave me this court order. It really is bad. Help me figure out how to take this procedurally generated court order and turn it into something that actually works for me and my family. And that's going to be an inverse of what's happening. Lawyers now are guiding people towards outcomes. In the future, lawyers are going to be given an outcome and figuring out how to fix it.
I'm really glad that I don't plan on getting divorced. And if my wife, what'd you say? I'm sorry.
It's a hypothetical example.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't prefer to get divorced the other way either. Just a terrible joke on my part. I do want to, so I want to address anybody in the audience or who's watching this on like a recast who isn't currently using Cleo. What would you say are the biggest things that they're missing out on?
Oddly enough, it's a sense of scale. So Clio is the most widely adopted and most widely recommended practice management system out there. And that virtuous feedback cycle that I've talked about only gets faster and better the more people participate in it. And so they're missing out on the intense development that's been done by Clio's. We're rounding up on 1,000 employees now.
Wow.
Which just boggles my mind. When I joined the company back in 2012, there were maybe 40 of us.
Wow.
And so that's 1,000 developers, 1,000 support agents. Well, not 1,000 of each, but support agents, our designers who are furiously looking at reports on whether a button is in the right place and making sure that the mobile app is easy to navigate. One of my favorite examples of the mobile app is there's a little plus button, which is like just a quick menu, like pull up the actions I need to do. And the order of things that are listed in that plus button is actually determined by the things people have done in the past on it. Most people need to actually create a calendar entry on their mobile app. It's one of the most common things that they do. And so rather than have it like way up here away from your thumbs, it's like the first thing down here. So your thumbs are ready to find it. And there are tens of thousands of attorneys who have helped shape where that calendar entry quick button is. And so when you come to Clio, you get the advantage of them giving us that feedback and you benefiting on it now. And it doesn't just happen in like the technology development, but we also have the Clio law community where lawyers can come and talk to each other and network. And so we have a referral network that's built there. We have advice and templates that are being shared between our community. And then when we have the Clio Cloud Conference, which is happening for those in the replay in October of 2022 in Nashville, we're going to be bringing thousands of lawyers together to meet in person or virtually. We've got a virtual component as well, and build relationships that will extend beyond just using software. So the network effects of Clio and that virtuous feedback cycle that I've talked about are only going to continue to grow and speed up. And it creates, I think, a win-win, not just for lawyers who use software, but their clients as well. And it's going to become a lift, a rising tide for all of the professionals that utilize us and all of the clients that they service.
I believe you because I've been in this game since 2013 and I've watched what Cleo did that time, and it's been nothing short of insane to watch this company go. I remember I think I took a phone call. I was in like the infancy of my career, but I took a phone call from somebody at Clio and we were talking about partnering and integrating and we were both, I don't know, I had like 10 employees here. You guys had maybe 100. And it's been insane to watch the evolution of the legal profession, the adoption of technology, and we'll see where it goes next. But I want to thank you. Yeah, me too. I want to thank you so much for joining us at our first annual Law Firm Summer Reboot Camp.